if you want to get the delegation right, you should use a tool like GoReCoS. GoReCoS is your guideline on what to get right as you are delegating something. So let's have a look at how GoReCoS works, what the topics are and what the steps are in order to fulfill a good delegation. We'll have a separate look at how to convince employees to take over responsibility in another video. So first of all, GoReCoS stands for 4 segments. And what we discussed before is you don't want to delegate a task, you want to delegate a responsibility. And the responsibility is for reaching a certain goal, and that should be a bigger goal, not those teeny tiny things that you have too much coordination work to do. When you want somebody to do something for you and reach a goal and to be successful with it, it is imminent that they need resources. And this is their time, this is experts within the organization, that is budget, this is IT tools at their disposal that make them effective, and many, many other things can be the resources that people need in order to reach goals. However, accessing resources is one thing that people might be able to do, but there's also things that people might not be allowed to do, and those are the constraints. The employee, you may not look for a different vendor. The employee, you might not discuss that with another department because that's at a later stage. You must not diverge from the standard process that we have. So the constraints are the things where you say you're not allowed to do anything that is A, B, C. And the typical thing in there is, for example, if you have a layer of delegation where you said, I want to have the final result controlled before you send it out. Then the constraint is you're not allowed to send out any result before I cleared it. And there you can build in the check-ins and the controlling measures. Now, if an employee has the goal and they understand it and they know what is the logic and the reason behind the goal and how it connects, and they have the proper resources and constraints, then they know the frame within which they are free to develop the final thing, the strategy. So to make that point again, the goal is understanding what do you need to reach, what is the SMART criteria, and what is the purpose behind the goal. Why do we want it? So that they are flexible enough understanding what this is really about. So what is the intention behind the goal? Then the resources are everything that the employee has in order to make it happen. The constraints is everything that must not be used, or the resources that they cannot ask, the budgets they cannot have, the processes that they cannot overrule, and also you need okay from a steering committee. This is also some constraints. And the strategy now is the question by which procedure, with which methods, with which steps, dear employee, do you plan to reach the goal? So the goal and the logic behind the goal is something that we delegate. We make a suggestion about the resources and the constraints. And then the employee accepts that and takes it on and goes like, okay, I'll think about how I can reach the goal. Now the employee generates a process going like, well, I would start it this way, and I would make sure that I have that milestone there and this milestone here, and that is important for me as well. And this is also what I want to do. So the employee thinks it through and comes up with a strategy themselves. Now, why is that important? Based on the quality of the strategy that the employee brings back to you, you can judge and guess, does the employee know what he or she actually needs to do? You get an understanding of the employee's understanding of the process. You have an employee that has a structured method of how do I want to reach the goal that he or she presents to you, and thus you have an agreement on how do you reach it, but also a stronger commitment, because from the psychology we know if somebody generated a strategy themselves, they have understood it, otherwise they couldn't generate it. And if we understand the strategy and we present it, we sell it, we are having a higher buy-in as well as a higher likelihood of actually reaching the goal in the end. So this is a psychologically very important point. In the end, the employee goes like, well, with that resource and that constraint and that strategy, I'm willing to accept the delegation to reach the goal. Now, here might be points where you start having a real negotiation, and that is good. If an employee at any point thinks like, I don't think with that resource and that constraints, I will be able to reach the goal, then you discuss it before they take over the responsibility. Now then there's the question, do you need more resources? Do you need other constraints? Do you need support? Do you need help? Do you need training? Do you need anything? So what is it that you need, or how can we optimize a strategy so that it will actually lead you to the goal and that you can actually accept the delegation? In the end, we go through GoReCoS so that every employee understands the goal with the logic behind it, understands the frame of responsibility of resources and constraints, and develops an accepted strategy so that the employee in the end goes like, I know what I need to do. And yes, I'm willing to commit to it. And I also suggested from myself what the milestones are that we can check in about. Now, in terms of controlling, it's a whole different story, whether you just have unannounced check-ins with the employees, which are causing stress, or whether the employee knows, well, in 2 weeks, my boss wants to see whether I reach the next milestone that I promised to reach. Now, what you do is, for every goal that you discuss with the employee, you're actually going in and creating a GoReCoS. So it might be that one employee in the end has kind of a GoReCoS sheet where there's goal number 1, goal number 2, goal number 3, goal number 4, and a set of resources, a set of constraints, and for every goal, then a differentiated strategy on how to reach things. And that strategy also shows you where there are touch points to other departments. And now you can make sure that you help that colleague to also manage the touch points and early on ask the colleagues from the other department when they will need support. Now with that, in the last step, also the touch points between the departments are becoming clear and becoming manageable. With the checking in based on the milestones or controlling the process, you are having very early knowledge of any deviation and diversion from the plan, and you can very early on start to take measures and activities in order to make sure that the goal will be reached even though there's an impasse on the way.